We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror.
Mostly.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Sean.
Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Sean.
What's up, buddy? What
What
happened?
The interview that we have this week is really cool for a reason that we don't mention in the actual interview. And so I wanted to start off this episode by talking about it really quick. So today's episode features director Barnaby Clay. And Barnaby has, I believe we would call it his first narrative feature that is out by the time you're listening to this, either just came out or is out soon, called The Seeding, a film that Sean and I both enjoyed a lot. But the thing that we don't mention in this episode, in the conversation, is that Barnaby is married to Karen O of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and that's so cool. I haven't stopped singing Maps
It's so cool.
since I
love you like I love you.
Yeah, it's just so cool. So I wanted to start off the episode with that because we don't mention it at all in the rest of the conversation. I thought about using my rec today to be the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, but from the get-go, if you played Guitar Hero as a kid, you know about Maps.
Yeah, dude.
You know about Heads Will Roll
crazy
as well. Two great.
We had it like kind of in there to bring it up, and it just didn't end up coming up in a way that felt like organic in that moment. And we talk about so much other stuff, and we only get to chat with these folks for so long. But yeah, obviously had to throw that out there at the beginning. And small fucking world, man.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. But that's a fun thing. And again, our conversation today, Barnaby Clay, director of The Seeding. Before that, let's talk about some things that you probably already know.
I'm sure you already knew that.
You only tell me stuff I already know.
You already know what I'm going to tell you.
Sean, are you excited for the new season of Yellowjackets?
I am excited, but I saw some stuff online that you're probably about to talk about.
Yeah, if you're excited, that's too fucking bad because it's not coming out until 2025.
Which is bullshit.
Yeah,
this year's going to suck.
I mean, I think this was bound to happen with the number of of course, number of shows and films that were stunted because of the WGA and SAG strikes, rightfully so. But it looks like they're not going to be putting that out till 2025. It does sound like we're going to be getting a special bonus episode before season 3 comes out. I can't remember. Didn't they do that between season 1 and season 2? There wasn't like a special Christmas episode or something that came out.
Well, I was a bit behind. But that sounds familiar. That there was a Christmas episode. I feel like we should know that.
I don't know. For some
trying
reason,
to remember like the plot of what it would be.
It feels like there was something that came out. They've talked about an extra episode. Maybe that's just something that I knew was happening, and then it didn't actually happen. But regardless.
Yeah. Either way,
regardless,
there was talks of it. Something happened, but I mean, I would rather, as much as this sucks, as much as it sucks to wait, I would rather wait. It is a fair price to pay for everything that was done and the little bit of progress that the strikes made, and I would rather wait than them rush and do a sloppy season.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, no sloppy seasons.
Yep.
Do it right. Take your time.
Get
it done.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great show and want it to be as good as possible. But just thought that was worth mentioning. The other thing to mention is that today, as we're recording this, actually just a couple hours ago, on January 19th, another teaser, a third teaser, has come out from Neon. This time exclusively on bloodydisgusting.com, for what everyone can assume is the upcoming film Longlegs, starring Micah Monroe and Nick Cage.
Gold Cage.
It seems like you hear Nick Cage's voice in the background, and it looks like it's Micah looking at the looking at her detective board, or what will you in the teaser. Really excited. Cool marketing campaigns don't happen as much as they probably should. And I feel like we are in the genre where that should happen more often than not. I will say Neon does a good job of this sort of stuff. But all the vibes associated with it so far, just the way it's shot, the way that they're marketing it, is making me really excited. It feels Zodiac-esque, like the serial killer nature of it. The use of a what's it called? The fucking cipher, like the use of different letters that aren't the actual alphabet, like that sort of stuff, is intriguing. So I don't know if you saw the teaser yet, but
I still haven't seen this one, but I saw that a new thing came out. I have not had a chance to look yet, but I'm also like nervous. It sounds like they're doing a good job. Like it's not stuff that's going to spoil stuff for me. So I'm definitely down to look at these. But yeah, I just haven't got to it yet. And yeah, I completely agree. Like fun marketing is fun for sure. I feel like it would be annoying if everything tried to be really like weird and mysterious in their marketing. Like it could just get too much, but having it happen every now and again, it makes this feel like special.
Yeah, it's got to be when it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
when
you couldn't like, which actually reminds me, yesterday as we're recording this was the 16th anniversary of Cloverfield. Which is a great, example of this marketing tactic, the mystery aspect of things, but only when it makes sense, only when it makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. It's funny. I don't remember ever seeing, like, I know of all the Cloverfield marketing post. Obviously wasn't around for like what Blair Witch did, but like Paranormal Activity was really awesome. Just, I don't know. It's cool. And I gotta go look at the new thing. Gotta see what it's about. I heard there's an axe, and that's exciting to me.
It's exciting.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's really, it's short, which is good. Don't do too much with these.
Right.
And one last thing that I have is a couple days ago, it was announced that there is going to be an adaptation of Until Dawn, the very popular horror video game. It's going to be taken on by David F. Sandberg, who did Lights Out, and he also did one of the Annabelle films. And then he pivoted away from horror, and he did the Shazam movies, which I didn't mind the first one. I didn't see the second one. I'm just tired of horror films of superhero movies in general. But yeah, I've never played Until Dawn. I know that it's like a like you play as different characters. There's a bunch of different possible endings depending on your choices. But I know it's mega popular. So very cool thing. I think that we're not that, people didn't adapt video games, but I think we're going to see a large uptick of video game adaptations, especially genre video games, as we have seen success with Five Nights at Freddy's, The Last of Us, things of that nature.
Even like Super fucking Mario, man.
Yeah, that's not a genre film, but I agree.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, I think that there's going to be an overall like video game to film boom. I will tell you that I have played Until Dawn. It was a lot of fun. It's admittedly those types of games are not my absolute favorite, where it's more focused on like I love a narrative game. I prefer those, but when it's mainly just like something comes and you have to press this button at this right time to react, or it's
you don't like God of War, Sean?
That's different though. That's different.
I know.
It's God of War still gives you a lot of like gameplay focused stuff, and this is very narrative focused, but it was still a lot of fun. And I don't want to spoil anything for people that don't know, but Until Dawn takes on it has a particularly fun theme, and I'm excited to see what they do with it and how it looks and stuff. And I'm assuming they'll create their own ending that's different even from the different options that you have in the game. I don't know. But yeah, and I'm pretty sure Rami Malek is a part of that game before he like blew up.
A part of the game.
There's a character
one of the
that
voice actors.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I mean, like it's modeled after his face, if I remember correctly. So I wonder if I don't know, it'd be cool if they brought him into the movie. But we'll see.
Yeah, that would be neat.
But yeah,
I feel like this
you should play
probably
it. It's
can't
quick.
have too much of a budget, but yeah, I'll definitely play it. I'll definitely play it. That was all I had. Anything else that they probably already know?
Just a couple things. The other thing I'm going to bring up is have you seen all the stuff going on with Stranger Things 5 and like like some of this, because Noah, I think
Snap.
Shap is how you Snap. Oh, Snap, Noah, you're fucking everything up. You're
a Zionist, Noah. Oh, snap.
Yeah. I didn't want to get like super into all of that stuff, but I just wanted to bring up, I mean, there's some definitely questionable things that he said and done online. I mean, the Zionism is sexy stickers thing was definitely odd.
Yeah,
I don't know,
and
if
that
you
was
saw
before
that
they even
specifically.
started. Like that was a couple months ago. Like that was like, I mean, the stuff in Gaza has been happening for over 100 days now, but that was at least a month and a half to 2 months ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's weird how it's still affecting. It like fell away, it like went away, and then it kind of came back now that production started again.
Yeah, well, and also he did like an apology video a couple days ago. That was, that doesn't really make a ton of sense. I just thought it was odd, and I was just curious if you had any thoughts on it. And Brett Gelman has been kind of going on a very pro Israel campaign right now, and we're not trying to like make the pod too political in this aspect. Like we've said what we needed to say about it, but I'm kind of worried about Stranger Things is the point, because they're definitely making the cast is making some aggressive moves right now that I think could lead to a pretty intense boycott, and it seems like potentially rightfully so.
Yeah,
so I don't know how much you've seen about all that.
I honestly haven't seen anything. It's so funny. I get in these like when Stranger Things takes these long breaks, I just like stop caring about Stranger Things. It's like, and then when I watch the season again, I'm like, God damn it, the show is so good. But then when it's gone, I'm like, I really just don't care at all. I'm like over. I'm not over it. I'm honestly ready for Stranger Things to be done, but also like when I watch it, I'm like, yeah, the show rules. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure Brett Gelman is a Jewish person and has Israeli family. Like that's, the people that I see online saying that sort of stuff normally have ties back to Israel. I'm Jewish. I don't feel the same way, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's all context. It all depends on what they say. I do think there's a time and place to say things. And again, like we've been saying before, like if you're like a B character in a really big TV show, like maybe just don't say stuff until you're done filming. Or I don't know, like that's what I would do probably, but I also like I'm not like against free speech, like say whatever the fuck you want. So
yeah, I've just been reading. I mean, there's things like apparently I still have to fully look into this, but they're apparently like in Gaza, pretty much every hospital has been bombed. I just feel like there's a clear, like, no matter where
100%.
you stand, where you're, there's a clear, like, what Israel is doing isn't great. Again, not trying to get fully into it, but yeah, it's just interesting to see people really lock into certain things, and I don't know. Just had to bring it up. They also, I guess, Eduardo Franco, whose character's name I cannot remember. Huh? Argyle. Yeah, I was about to say, I knew it was something interesting. They haven't even called him back. So I'm just very curious about the state of the new season. And I know what you mean. Like I don't like actively think about Stranger Things all the time. But hearing all of these things happen at once and seeing these handful of articles has just been like, damn, I really hope that they don't super drop the ball in the last season.
I'm sure it'll be fine. And also, like, as they've gone on, they've added more and more and more characters. And so I feel like this is the final season. You probably need to like trim the outsides a bit just to like tighten things up. So Argyle not being in it doesn't really scare me. Even Noah like dying, like he's a character that like could easily go. And same with Brett, like another B character that I feel like you got to fine tune, like the final survivors or the final people.
It's just Argyle was very, very funny.
He's great. He was comedic relief, like but he also wasn't in it that much favorite in the most recent season.
No.
So
yeah, it's just it just seems like especially with everything going on, it seems like an interesting like ball to drop if they're just not hitting anybody. It just seems like good fan service,
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be a reason for it, and we'll see when it comes out.
Yeah, we're not a part of it, but yeah, that's really all I had that really fits into this category. I have some other things I really want to tell you about, but we'll wait until the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we'll wait till then. On that note, we do have a conversation with Barnaby Clay that we're going to get to for his film The Seeding. Any final thoughts before we get over to that conversation?
talking with Barnaby was awesome, and the seating is so good. I went into it, I didn't have like any negative whatever in my head. I was just like, yep, I'm watching this movie. I know it's not like a crazy high budget movie or anything. I didn't really have any idea of what to expect, and was pleasantly, I don't want to say surprised, but was just like pleasantly, it was just nice to watch a movie and be like, damn, this is really fucking good.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen a couple times recently, and it's been nice, and we'll talk about some of that later. But yeah, Barnaby's awesome. Lots of great insight, and I'm super stoked to see what he does in the future. I hope he stays in the genre.
On that note, we'll get you guys over to our conversation with Barnaby Clay, the director of The Seeding. Hang out with us afterwards and hear our mostly horror recommendations, and maybe anti-recommendations of the week. We'll catch you on the other side. All right, we are joined today by Barnaby Clay. Barnaby's previous work includes music videos for bands like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Gnarls Barkley, as well as the documentary Shot, the Psycho-Spiritual Mantra of Rock. His newest film, The Seeding, comes out in theaters and VOD on January 26th. Barnaby, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. We're stoked to have you.
Super stoked to have you. We loved the movie.
Very happy to be here.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, obviously we got to talk about The Seeding, but before we get to that, I'm going to throw a question at you that we like to throw at all of our guests. We're really curious about your introductions to the genre. Looking for any stories like you as a little kid, maybe sneaking out of your room and seeing something from behind the couch that you weren't supposed to see, or maybe an adult in your life that may have exposed you to something a little too early. So yeah, Barnaby, do you have anything like that to share with us?
Sure, yeah. I have a couple of things actually.
Perfect.
Oh man, I've got a few, but I could go all day with this. But I have a friend. My best friend's father was like a huge horror fan, and he lived in this huge old house in the north of England. And I mean, when I say huge, this is like The Shining, or something like that.
Got it.
Like long
Sounds haunted already.
Yeah. And so it's terrifying just being there anyway. I was like 8 or something. And he liked to show us films. And one night he showed us like a double bill. And it was like started off with one not particularly scary film. It was something like The Cat and the Canary. Or so it was some like old, like kind of funny, like not too bad. And then he showed us Seconds, the John Frankenheimer film with Rock Hudson, which is like, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but it's really pretty disturbing, actually. It's like psychological horror, which is
interesting.
Really not for like, I don't know, I think maybe I was 10 or something. It's not for a 10-year-old child at all. It's like really the kind of thing which just spins your head out. You're like, what have I just seen? What is this thing? This is insane.
Even just the face wrap would have scarred me as a kid, just looking at some of the images. I haven't seen it, but I'll have to check it out.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's, it's a guy who basically wants a new identity, and he via plastic surgery is given a whole new face and life, and it's the face of Rock Hudson, of course. But then slowly, like, his mental self begins to deteriorate, and he and it's a disaster. But it's a lot of stuff which is like way too much for a small mind to take in. So there was that, and then I think when I was 8, it was definitely when I was 8, actually. It was the same age as my son. I got taken to a school friend's birthday. And it's always somebody's dad, basically. It's always and his parents were like divorced, and so it was like dad's turn to take the kids out, and obviously dad did not have a fucking clue, so he like took like 12 boys, like 8-year-old boys, to this place called the London Dungeons, which is like, it is like Madame Tussauds Waxworks, but just the horror version of it, like really nice, like, like waxworks of people with the plague, and like, getting their leg amputated on on a ship, or something. It's just like it's crazy stuff. And then so we saw that, and then he took us to the ICA in London, and we watched this film called Captain Clegg, which is a Hammer horror film with Peter Cushing. And I've since seen this film, and it's really not scary at all. But like, again, to my 8-year-old mind, it was like terrifying. And I think my mum had to sit either in my bedroom or just outside my bedroom every night as I fell asleep for like 2 weeks or something. It was very
wow.
So both those things were formative moments for me.
Absolutely. Just the imagery alone, I can tell. I haven't seen either of them, but I'll definitely have to look into them. But I can see how the imagery would stick in there, especially to a young mind that isn't fully understanding what's going on. I watched. I was just kind of like essentially stalking you on YouTube, looking for any interviews you've done, and I saw you did a talk with a channel called Book Frenzy, and you were kind of showing off your in immense collection of books, and you talked about a book called Fungus the Boogeyman. So I was just curious if there were any. Yeah, I love the art for it. I have like a whole thing for children's book illustrations. Were there any like weird children's books that stuck out to you, or illustrations that made you really uncomfortable?
I mean, that was a big one. Actually. Yeah. That was like, and in fact, I've recently I shared that with my son, who's, like I said, he's 8, and he loves it actually. But yeah, it's just like kids are just like, you just get so. I was so attracted to stuff which was just a little strange and off, and like you're like, what this? It's like, yeah, it's like a city of creatures who live just beneath the surface of the earth, who have gills, and they're like kind of like, they look a bit like the creature from the Black Lagoon, like fat versions of the creature from the Black Lagoon. And they basically like bathe in baths of slime, and kind of, they're all about just being gross. And that was a big winner for me. And actually it was by a guy called Raymond Briggs, who was a huge author of children's books in Britain when I grew up. And he was interesting because he wrote very successful kids books, and they were all quite dark. There was one, he wrote The Snowman and this one, Father Christmas, which are a little bit lighter. But then I don't really know what happened, but then he suddenly came out with this book called Where the Wind Blows. And, he's a famous children's book author, and he comes out with this book, which is Where the Wind Blows. And it's the same style, it's like a little graphic novel kind of thing for kids. But it's about a couple going through a nuclear holocaust. And you're like, what the fuck, man? It's like, really, really dark, like right. So, that was pretty interesting.
He was trying to broaden his horizons. Sometimes you gotta, you do enough kids' books, you got to do a nuclear Holocaust one.
And broaden the kids' horizons,
Yes, broaden the kids' horizons too.
I think a lot of the best ones as well, a lot of the best children's authors are a bit dark. I mean, say what you will about Roald Dahl, but like, he's a genius, man, like
absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah, there's always those, the edges, I think, are what really make them, where it's not just the kid that is enjoying it, it's the parent who's reading it with them that's like, oh yeah, I feel this too, like I can jive with what this book is saying as well. So those are like, I feel like, the best kids books. One thing, like, you obviously have a horror edge to the things that you create, or a darker edge to the things that you create, but a lot of the stuff that you've made centers around music, whether it be music videos or shorts or experimental films that you've done for art installations. I'm curious where the love of music came from. Obviously, like, anyone that looks at the list of your filmography will see the number of music videos, but is there a place that you would pull from to like really point to where your love for music started?
I mean, I think it's just like, in like underground culture. It's like the two go hand in hand, basically. Like, when I was a young teenager, I was just like rabidly devouring both film and music, and then you go out to this was like, I'm getting on in years now, so this was like, basically pre-internet years, and so I was really like having to to find these things. You're finding these communities, and often there was crossover. Like the place which for me was like the kind of like the holy grail of cinema, and the place where I credit to be my like major film school was cinema. They've just made a film about it, but it was a cinema in London called the Scala, and it was in a very grotty part of London, and it was they showed the most incredible like programming you could possibly imagine. And then they on Friday and Saturday night, they had these like all-nighters, which were like like all night LSD movies, or like and it was the place where not just you had like filmmakers coming and showing their films, like John Waters and these kind of like cult filmmakers back then, but at the same time and Richard Kahn, and like really interesting kind of, but also there was always a musical element there as well, so I think that was, and the Scala used to be it used to be, and now is again, a music venue. And it's, interestingly enough, obviously you mentioned my film Shot, the documentary about Mick Rock, and he shot two of his most famous album covers. The album cover of Lou Reed's Transformer and the Stooges' Raw Power were both shot within a week in that same venue, in the Scala. So it just like, I think a lot of these, these film and music, just like if you're searching for like subcultures or whatever at a young age, they generally come together basically. And you go to a gig and you see, you go to a music show and you see the people wearing T-shirts of like movies you like, or vice versa, and then, and I was really into music, and I was in bands, when I was most of my teens and early 20. And then I was just like, realized that I had no place being in music. Just zero, all the enthusiasm, but no talent, unfortunately. But
there, I get it.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was fun, It's connection as well. That's the other thing. It's connection. You find your people. You go to like, oh, sorry, there you go. Didn't silence it. Yeah, so that's what you're kind of like looking for, and that's what I found within the music and the type of communities that I was looking for.
Yeah, and obviously you still, I don't even want to say harken back to that, because you continue to cover music, whether it's doing music videos or even, I mean, we've seen a number of the things that you've worked on, and it always plays a big part. We'll talk about the score of the seating, but that the music is such a big part of this as well. And I'm sure there's like a lyrical nature to the way that you're kind of writing the script, even because of the way that you enjoy music. So I love that. Also, the thought of a repertory theater that also doubles as a music venue is like the best idea that I've ever heard. And I don't know why I've never, we're in New York, and I feel like there should be one here. And for some reason I've never heard of one. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So shout out to the Scarlet.
Yeah. So obviously we have to bring up the seating. I was going to ask, because I saw the seating first. I was going to ask where the seed for the seating was planted. But then I went and watched Finkel's Odyssey, your short from, I think, like 2007. And now I'm wondering if the idea just fell into your lap from a interdimensional butthole in your ceiling. So can you talk about the kind of the seating and where it sort of began? Because there's so many themes that you're touching on in this film, and we just loved it.
Sure. Great. well, start off with that. That's really funny that you went and watched Finkel's Odyssey.
I loved it. It was so good. Yeah,
it's a really good one. Yeah,
thought of that for so long. It's like so old, but yeah, it's fun, man. Yeah, well, I mean, to start off with, I was, I just come out of filming. Well, I was in the edit process of editing my documentary, and I really, I've been trying to make a feature forever, and I just like always, write a script and put it out there. Nothing happens, or get some traction, and then it all falls away, and blah blah blah. Same old story, and I just I had a difficult edit process with the documentary. I didn't have creative control. I was kind of a bit of a gun for hire, and it was frustrating. And I just had this thought as I went into writing the seeding that I needed to come up with an idea that was contained enough that I could shoot it for not a lot of money, basically. And sure. Thereby retain some level of creative control, So that was the driving force behind it. But then, I was very taken with the film Woman of the Dunes but I didn't want to do a remake of that because it's a perfect film as far as I'm concerned. And but I loved the idea of it, and I just wanted to make something which was mine though, and so that was kind of in the back of my mind for a long time. And then I was walking through the desert with my wife, and she was pregnant at the time, and when it was my first child, and when you're in that situation, i.e. expecting your first child, it brings you to a place mentally which maybe you've not been before, where you're thinking of things on a larger, more existential level. Sure. Mm-hmm. Same thing with, a few years before that, a couple of years before my father passed away, and same thing there. You just birth and death. You're in a situation where it's, you're kind of pulled out of the real world, yet you're so in the real world, and you're forced into a place where you're just thinking things. You're really looking at life on a really vast level, and seeing the kind of connected tissue, there, and feeling all these feelings that you've never really felt before. And I think, so, within that, somewhere within all those feelings, this story came to me, and I was like, yeah. And it wasn't when I started writing it, I wasn't trying to say that, but they're just kind of coming out on the page as you're writing it, but I'm wanting to do something which is okay, this is kind of a thriller and it's horror, and I'm wanting to do that, but at the same time, I do want to have something else going on in there, which is maybe a little bit deeper and makes you think about things, without forcing it down your throat, without being kind of too highfalutin about it,
Sure.
Yeah, I love, because when I've never seen Woman of the Dunes, but I know of it, just being a fan of film, and watching this film, the premise specifically didn't remind me of it, but watching this film, I was like, oh, this is very, it's an homage to it in a way, because it's not, like you said, it's not on the nose. But I also saw you posted on your Instagram a list of films that inspired it, and there's some that I think, Lord of the Flies, I think you can see that sort of thing with the nature of the children. But there's some on here that I've never heard, Who Can Kill a Child, and also I've heard of Walkabout, but I think Walkabout's another great reference. Were there aspects of the desert or being in that space where you were I need to include this, or I need to find the right desert, the right lonely atmosphere?
Yeah, the desert, and in particular the canyon where the film takes place, is it's not just the backdrop, it's a character itself, and
absolutely.
Again, when you're when you're out there in the desert, you just immediately have this sense of, well, two things. You have a innate sense of vulnerability, just like, you feel like vulnerable to nature. You feel like if you walk too far in that direction, you could very easily get lost, and then that's it. You're kind of screwed, man. And it happens the whole time, unfortunately. But and then on top of it, you're also like reminded about the vastness of our planet and the universe and all this kind of shit.
How
so
small
it's
you
kind
are.
of,
yeah,
and a lot of the films that I was really like thinking about were, there was in particular some. You mentioned Walkabout. There was like a group of like Australian films from the 70s, Walkabout, Wake in Fright, and Picnic at Hanging Rock, which all deal with kind of essentially like people coming from a safe environment and then being put in the desert and then being kind of at the mercy of the forces around them, and how they, and they have those films left such a strong impression on me, and they still do. I still love them, and they are really visceral films, and they're really also, I love the way they look and feel, and I think that was the strongest influence on this film more than anything, actually. They just have an atmosphere to them, it's kind of like grimy and sweaty and dirty, and this is kind of where I was like going towards with this.
Yeah, I specifically, I was telling Sean with Walkabout, like even just the beginning, kind of the inciting incident is one of the most like, holy shit, that's what we're doing, like for the film. You know what I mean? Like that's like, oh, this is what we're getting into. So that's, it's great. When I saw that on your list, I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
I said it's uncompromising, and I love films
Yes.
which are uncompromising. It's just like that's why obviously at the beginning of my film there's a pretty like strong image there, like right up at the front, because for that exact reason, which is just like, I was like thinking, because actually there was a very different beginning to the film, and him like driving out into the desert and all that kind of stuff. But it was more like we just didn't have the time and money to do it. So, and then I was just like, do I even really want that? Like I've seen it so many times, but I haven't seen this image, which came into my mind. And I'm like, and if I can get this image and it's cool, then this is going to be exactly what you said. It's going to be like, oh shit, this is the world we're entering right now.
Yes. Yes, exactly. It reminded me, like, it was that great, like, setting the stage element, but it also reminded me of the beginning of 2001 for some reason, where it's like you're curious of like, where is this set? What are the, like, it brings up a lot of questions that you don't answer right away, and then you go to Scott's character and you don't answer those questions, off the bat, which I thought was great. I do want to talk about the cast, and we'll get to the kids in a second, but you have two great leads with Scott and Kate. They both go to limits that I think you don't really see in a lot of their other work. Scott specifically goes absolutely apeshit. What strings are you pulling at to direct them in that way, or did you give them anything, any specific direction to lead him to be, I don't want to spoil anything, but to lead him to get to the point where he is near the end of the film?
I kind of had a hunch with both of them. You follow your instinct when you're doing these things, and I had a feeling that upon meeting them, even just meeting them, in fact, I met them both first time like this, just like on Zoom, essentially. I was just like, because it was during the pandemic and we were doing this, and so that's all I could do. But with Scott, I remember this just like, I don't know, uneasiness about him that I felt like kind of like fitted the character, and I just saw something in his work that just felt like, because this particular character has got to get from like one extreme to another. Well, not one extreme. He's got to go from very kind of normal, regular place to the kind of primal version of himself, you know. And when we were casting it, it was very much like, you know, when I was looking at all these actors, I was like, well, I know these actors here can get there, but these ones can't get there. You know, they're great actors, but are they going to be able to like get to that place? You know, and I just felt like there was something in him that could get there. I still didn't know, obviously, until we saw him in that situation. And I think there was a lot of people who like were kind of like questioning, like, is he the right guy for this part? You know, and then they like, you know, they saw him in that situation, and especially those that like that final act, and they were like, oh shit, yeah. That's why you asked him, you know, like they understood it. You know, the trajectory made sense at that point, you know.
Sure.
And then with her, like, again, there was just like when I met her for the first time on Zoom, I could just, you know, she was really into the script and she was really nice, but she had this just slightly kind of mysterious quality to her. She didn't really I didn't really know exactly what she was thinking. I was like, she's saying she likes the script. Does she really like the script?
Sure.
And you know, and she kind of like looked right and had this very, you know, like placid sort of face, but like a kind of almost sort of pre-Raphaelite kind of face. But like, I just didn't know. And but I just felt like that was so interesting to like have somebody who I'm like, if I can't tell, then the audience is not going to tell what's going on in this person's head, you know. And but again, like you know, it was interesting because we didn't shoot in chronological order, but where we could, we did, you know. And I think the scene which bridges the second act and the final act, where she unleashes, you'll know the scene when you see it, but when she did that, like, it was kind of like, it was such an amazing moment because, like, you know, for a lot of the shoot prior to that, she'd just been like, had all this like scorn from Scott's character, like had so much like, you know, she'd been like, and she was so quiet, and like sometimes we had to like, you know, like get the mic closer to her because she's so quiet, and like, you know, so we're just like, oh, what's going to happen in that scene? And then when she did it, you're like, holy fuck, man, she's got that in her.
Yeah.
Like suddenly, like she like unleashed this like this like torrent, animalistic, but kind of like also, yeah, just powerful kind of, yeah, it was amazing, you know, amazing. And yeah, so it was really blew me away, and everybody else.
Absolutely. We're obviously not going to get too super spoilery, but this episode does come out a few days after its release, and we always encourage our listeners to you know, to watch first and then listen to us post. But I was just laughing while you were talking about the casting process with her, because it's just funny to imagine, like, casting for horror is so interesting because you're thinking to yourself, looking at her like, I can't tell if she gets this or if she's really into it, but there's something unnerving about her, and she creeps me out, and I could totally imagine her in a hole in the desert. Like, that's so funny to me. Yeah, I mean, obviously the story is so intense, but, you know, simple in the sense that it's mainly focused on two characters stuck with each other. And yeah, a good majority of the time you're trying to figure out what her intentions are and who she is, because she is incredibly mysterious. So it just seems like it was casted so perfectly, and they both, you know, in a movie that relies so much on their performance, they both delivered immensely. I do want to ask about the kids a little bit. You know, the kids outside of the hole. Sure. There's so many things about the movie that seem like there's so much storytelling that I feel happens between the lines. You know, you don't even really get the characters' names throughout the movie, but these kids felt like they had this whole backstory and this, like they didn't just feel shallow to me. Like I could tell that there was this whole backstory that I wasn't even getting, that wasn't a part of this story directly. I'm just curious what writing and casting those kids was like, because it just feels so deep, even though you only showed us so little. I know it's kind of a weird question, but I was just fascinated by them as characters.
No, I mean, obviously, when I was writing it, I was, wanting to create characters which were not two-dimensional, which were more than just like evil kid number one. And I wanted to make them, I wanted to give them, just like create a level of like, this structure within them. And like, because obviously you get a bunch of kids together, they create these hierarchies and they have their different characters and they bring their characteristics to, together, and they fight, and and each one of them had a pretty strong sense of who they were. And they were fun characters to create, obviously, but also I think for them to play. And I didn't, there was always a question of like, do we need more of this, or like in terms of like what is their story? And some things we did shoot, initially, like we actually shot, and it's kind of something which I still to this day feel a little bit like, should I have cut that out? I don't know, but we shot it was one scene, but it was basically one shot, like long shot, like moving through what I called their lair, which is basically where they lived. Mm-hmm. And which kind of again gave you a little bit of framework for their, who these people were, where they went to when they weren't on the screen, what they did. But I think the idea was always just like within the writing process throughout the film was to make it feel like, this could actually happen. Basically, this could be a thing which could happen if you leave people alone to their own devices. People do crazy things, but those things over a period of time don't feel so crazy because it's just there's generations doing this, and it becomes a thing. And then so everything we had from like the clothes that they wore and how they survived and everything was all like spoken of between the head, the departments. Like, where do they get their clothes from? Well, they go to like, they go through, dumpsters at the back of like the gas station off the highway, and they pull shit out of there. The stuff for her house, they'll like find again. It's the desert. You drive through the desert and there's just like shit everywhere. Basically, there's like, you'll just see a field and there'll be like a bed sitting in it and a sofa next to it. And you're like, what the hell is that doing there?
Right. What's the story behind that?
They drag it down to her, and then they like lower it down, and she's got a bed. It's just like, it was all like thinking like that, just always to try and justify the reality of their situation, which I think helped them. And then we did I know we're going to get into the soundtrack, but we did in a bit, but I just wanted to touch on the one thing we did which was very helpful was because I didn't have a lot of time to like rehearse with them, and they're all kids, so they obviously needed to know each other and be really familiar with each other the moment they got on set. But I didn't have a lot of chance to like sit there and do that with them. So I asked my cousin who wrote the score, who obviously had to teach them these chants. They do these kind of primordial chants throughout the film, and so he had to practice with them. He took them into this barn next to the motel that we were staying in and taught them these chants. And within that situation, they got to know each other. They became friends, and they talked about their characters. And so they really had a strong sense of character going into the film, which really helped.
I love the thought of other people in that motel coming out and hearing children chanting in a barn next door. Like that
Yeah. It's terrifying.
It's so good. They're like, I don't know what's happening, and I'm not even gonna ask.
Weird looking bunch as well, man.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. I love that little inside info. Yeah, I love Tristan Bichette. Is that how you pronounce his last name? Bichet. Tristan Bichet. Yeah, I mean the score is so good. It's so specific and fitting to this, but also listening back to things that he's done previously, even like really old industrial stuff like Flux Information Sciences, like that. Yeah. The vibe of that is very specific to this film itself. Is this something where you had talking about editing and having full creative control? Did you have an idea for the score that you wanted in this film from the get-go, like temp tracks that he had already done maybe, or is it something that you worked on after it was completed?
No, this was all very premeditated. We Tristan is my cousin, and so we've obviously known each other forever, and worked together in the past as well. We've done a few things together, and you know, from the get-go, I was just like, Tristan's the guy for this. You know, it just was like, I love his music. I love how he approaches things. He's like a very left field, kind of out of the box thinker. You know, he's like, you know, this is the lane, you know, the straightforward lane that people follow. Well, I'm going to take this road instead, you know, which is like the weird, fucked up, bumpy road, you know, like that's his vibe. And he's got great taste as well. And I just, you know, and we're just very in sync. So like, we started talking about this very early on, and he started sending me stuff whilst I was still writing the film. So by the time I was casting and crewing up, I had maybe like 20, 30 pieces of music already. Not all of them made it in the film. But it was just really helpful. I chose like 5 of them, and I shared them with my cast. I shared them with my key crew, you know, just to say, yeah, look, this is the script, you know, and this is the sonic landscape of it, you know. So they had that. I think was very helpful for them to get a little bit inside my head of where this was, you know, this was going to end up like, and what the type of choices I'm going to make. Because I think if you're choosing, you know, obviously the type of music you choose denotes your taste and and I think it just helps steer people around you, like to know that, you know, this is where you're going with it. So it was very, very helpful. And then we, in the edit process, we then, like, you know, obviously like tried music everywhere and had to create some new cues. We had to like obviously edit a lot of the older cues, and then ultimately, but just like, I think the hardest thing was like, it was like such a long period of time. So we just had to kind of like make sure that they still felt of the same world, you know?
Yeah, like revisit it
into different sonic territories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can see how that would be helpful specifically for the actors too, because I know even when writing anything, I'll listen to music that I think is similar to whatever I'm writing. And so I can imagine if you're playing a part, hearing that music and getting into the same you know, space that you're in, what makes sense. And obviously it worked out in the way that you were intending as well, because all the actors are in the same, you know, no one feels like they're in a different movie, you know what I mean? And I think with this type of film that can happen, but everyone feels like they're really grounded in this. I do have one question.
Actually, just should mention quickly that it is we're very happy to announce that it's being released, actually, the soundtrack, because Milan Records are going to bring it out. So
nice.
Love
Heck
that.
Yeah, excited. Very excited about that.
We'll have to pick that up once once I see a link for it.
That's a rad score, man.
Oh, that's great to hear. One question I do want to ask to kind of put a bow on this, and this is this is something I'm going to kind of flip your story onto you. You're in the desert. You end up in a hole in the desert. And it doesn't seem like you can get out. What's the first thing that you do? Because I feel like when watching this film, there was a lot of times where I would think, oh, I would just try that, or I would just do this. And the character does most of the things that I would recommend doing. I'm curious where your brain would go if you were in this sort of situation. Do you just start planning for the end, or like what happens?
Yeah. Just try and make friends really quickly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, it's interesting because, a lot of the time when we were shooting it, your mind can play tricks on you. Like when we had the camera down at the bottom, we're looking up at this wall of rock, to the cliff's edge. And sometimes it looked kind of short, and you're like, does this look like you can climb out of here? But like, literally, we all tried, and you could climb like probably about 10 foot, and that was it, and then you were screwed. But what would I do? I would try and climb out because I feel like I'm quite a good climber. I would try and maybe build some sort of contraption. I feel like if I really think this through, I'd have some good answers, but I don't really right now. But
that's all right. The climbing thing is good.
Well, because you do actually like sit there, and obviously when you're writing these things, you sit there and you're like, okay, like I've got to think of the good ways of getting out. What's the imaginative ways that can work here? And some of them are like really convoluted, and you're like, maybe if I was there, I'd do it, but like I'm not going to do that in film. It's going to take forever, So, but it's a good question. I would probably just give up. And
that's what I was looking for, Barnaby.
Yeah.
No, I think the climbing thing, it's funny because it's one of those things when you're watching it, you're like, I could do that. But it's like, I'm not the guy from Free Solo. Like my upper body strength is garbage. Like, you know what I mean? I would try to do it and be like, no, I'd maybe do push-ups for months and then try to climb. But no shot.
I am no athlete, but I have always seen myself as a really good climber. And I was studying that hole that he was in, and I was like, there's no way you're not getting out of that. I think it's all really about prevention. I'm sorry, but if I see a kid in the desert and I try to bring that kid with me and he just keeps walking the other way, I am not following him. I'm just not doing it. I'm sorry, I'm not that guy. I'm not a hero. But yeah, we love the score. Really excited to hear that release from Tristan's work on the score to Robert. I think I don't want to butcher the last name. Robert Lietzel. His cinematography to your writing. It really just creates this sense of isolation, and everything meshed really well. I know you said you recorded some stuff with the kids, kind of giving their background. And while like the curiosity in me wants to know, I think for the sake of the film, leaving that stuff out and even not naming people and stuff, just it helps me feel trapped in there with them. So I think all the perfect decisions were made, and yeah, you guys just nailed it. I just wanted to say all that because it seriously all worked together so well. Great. Yeah, but yeah, so we obviously don't want to take up too much of your time. We mentioned at the beginning of the interview that we do something called mostly horror recs. So we're wondering if you have maybe a horror film and a non-horror film. You've named plenty in the sake of the interview, so if you wanted to double down, you could do that. But what do you got for us?
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, actually, you brought up Who Can Kill a Child, which is a pretty interesting film, and one that I was unaware of until like I think I was just sending the script out for financing, and somebody was like, "Oh, have you seen Who Can Kill a Child?" This kind of reminds me of Who Can Kill a Child, I was like, "Oh, I've never seen that," and I have seen like pretty much everything, so I was just like, "That's weird. How did that one get through?" And it's a Spanish film, I think from the 80s. Spanish director, did 2 films, this and another film called The House That Screamed, which is also really good, actually. It's kind of more of a kind of Suspiria type film.
Okay.
But Who Can Kill a Child is about a English couple who are holidaying in Spain, and they kind of go on a day trip to an island nearby off the coast of Spain, and they arrive there on this little boat, and they soon discover that all the adults have gone on the island, and they don't know where they are, and they try to get off the island, and they realize they're basically being chased, and the adults are being like systematically killed by the children, right? And it sounds kind of schlocky in a way, but it's actually like incredibly good. It's like really well made. It's got a lot of tension, and it has something pretty deep to say. It starts off in this really kind of insane way. Like the opening credits is basically 4 or 5 minutes of real footage of like awful stuff, just like, you know, like Auschwitz, and just like, you know, just like terrible visuals. And, you know, you're like, why are they showing all this stuff? You know, it's just grim, you know. But then you realize that the whole thing of the whole like idea of the story is just like adults have just fucked up. You know,
right.
You are destroying this planet. You are like killing each other, and you're killing us. And so we're going to take control. And that's the central premise for the story, which is pretty fucking strong, man.
Yeah, I support that message.
It's really cool. So I would say go and watch that. It's a great movie. It's pretty. I think it's out on Blu-ray. It's very. It's not like a barrel of laughs, but it's definitely. It's like I said. It's got a lot of really good tension, and it's well made, and it's just. It's a good one. And then
nice.
Non-horror. Oh my god!
It could even be a book. I know you love to read. Yeah.
Well, actually, just on the theme of children, if we go on to books, I'm just reading a book by Yukio Mishima at the moment. You know, who are a great Japanese writer from the 40s, 50s, 60s, I think. And he, who ended up, I mean, his story is insane. It was made into a film by Paul Schrader, Mishima, and great film, actually. And but he wrote this one book called The Sailor Who Fell from Grace from the Sea, which was then turned into a movie, actually, which starred Chris Christopherson and, funny enough, my mother's like best friend from childhood, Sarah Miles. And it's about bunch of like evil kids.
Love it.
But kind of like it's a more like psychological. You know, it's just about this group of like children. It's kind of a little Lord of the Fliesy, but less like children left to their own devices, but more just like you never really get a full sense of why, apart from it's more, again, I think it's more like nurture versus nature thing, you know. And it's really interesting. It's just a really interesting psychological, and the film is good as well. It's not great, the film, but it's good. It's definitely good in that kind of 70s slightly odd atmospheric vibe, you know.
Sure. It sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah, when you know what you're going in for too.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
No, totally, yeah.
Even if it is schlocky, we love killer kids, or evil kids, creepy kids on the show. So even if there's some schlock,
nothing wrong with creepy kids, man. I love it. You know,
yes,
always.
That's always a good place to end it on. We love creepy kids here at Mostly Horror. Barnaby, we really appreciate your time. Thank you again. Really excited for everyone to check out The Seeding and also listen to the soundtrack when that drops. But thank you again for your time, and we're excited for whatever's coming next. All right. Thank you guys so much for checking out our conversation with Barnaby Clay, director of The Seeding. Shout out to Barnaby for joining us. We really appreciate it. Now it's time for the mostly horror recommendations of the week. I feel like there's going to be some stuff from both sides here that we need, that we're going to, it's going to be fun to dig into. I can let you go first because I know Sean now has a letterbox, so I'm now able to see what Sean is watching, and I do like to see it because I then can I can prepare for what we may talk about. It's fine that I'm not surprised. I actually didn't read I saw the rating, but I didn't read the whole review of what you're about to talk about. Yeah, because I wrote a lot. Because I was curious what you were gonna. I figure we would talk about it anyways. Mm-hmm. Hit me, Sean. This is not a mostly horror rec.
Yeah, this is what we call, and I don't even want to say anti-rec because all right. I watched We're All Going to the World's Fair is where I'm going to start. I watched We're All Going to the World's Fair. People have been talking about this movie for a really long time. There are a lot of people that love this movie. It really, hit and made waves. Steve has been championing, and he's showing off his championing. That's a really cool case for that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't know why
my camera did this. My camera.
It's because you got AIs built into your camera, dude. Crazy. It's fucking
all right. Anyways,
it makes its own decision, but no, that's a cool case, and I know that you really enjoyed this movie. Yeah. And a lot of our constituents online have really enjoyed this movie.
Okay, so we're calling
dude, I just didn't get it. I gave it on Letterboxd. They give you a 1 to 5 star rating system, and dude, I gave it a half a star. I just didn't get it. I just didn't like it. Basically in my review, I was saying that, and before I start, I want to say clearly this movie touches on a lot of really important topics. It resonates with a lot of people and very specific communities, and I'm not trying to dog it. I'm not trying to shit on anybody that likes it, and I think that a lot of the things it talks about are important, but some of these themes are isolation, identity, our relationship with those things, our relationship with the internet. Mm-hmm. All sorts of stuff. I don't have it all at the tip of my tongue at the moment, but it touches on a lot of very important stuff. Mm-hmm. But it felt like it didn't do anything with those things to me. Like, I felt like it was a movie where nothing happened, and I'm just wondering if it's like just being applauded for bringing these topics up. And which doesn't make sense to me, because I feel like there are things that are commented on a lot, mm-hmm. in especially in the genre space. So it just wasn't enough for me. I needed more from it, and I felt like I didn't get it. Like, nothing really happened. I know that you said that there's one specific moment, mm-hmm. that was really unsettling to you, and I think it's one of two moments. I'm wondering which one it is, but yeah, overall, I'll hand it over to you after saying this, but I just think that clearly I wasn't the target audience, and I'm struggling to understand what people found so great about it, or what was so different. So with that, what's up? Why'd you like it so much, dude?
I get it. So I think I'm curious, like, what would you have given? Like, you didn't have a letterbox when you saw Skinamarink, but like, what would you have given Skinamarink?
I guess I'd have to rewatch it to fully know, but I didn't like absolutely love Skinamarink, but I probably would have given Skinamarink like a 2.5 or a 3.
Okay, because that's my thing.
Yeah,
is
somewhere
like,
in the middle.
I gave We're All Going to the World's Fair a 3.5. Like, I think it's a really good movie. That's like something that I haven't seen in a really long time, or like ever, that expresses something that I haven't seen. And that makes me like feel a way while I'm watching it that I haven't really seen. But I don't think it's like the best movie ever. I just think it's like a unique horror experience where I was like, oh shit, like I don't know if I've watched a horror film that's like made me feel the way that this movie did. But that doesn't necessarily like make it a good movie. Whereas like I can't get through Skinamarink. Like, that's like the difference for me.
You're just so bored.
I can't even do. Yeah, gotcha. I can't even do. And so I think it's I think it's the atmosphere. of We're All Going to the World's Fair. It's the feeling for this young girl in the situation that she's in. It's the remembering what it was like at the beginning of the internet to feel like you have to, like, if you can't make friends in real life, that you need to make friends online, and like struggling to do that, or like trying to find connection online in any way that you can. I think is something that like I felt kind of growing up or in like middle school, but in that was reflected in this. And yeah, the one scene is basically when she like is recording herself while she's sleeping, and
she leans over,
and it's at night.
Yeah,
my skin, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It literally, because I don't think there's any sound going on, and it's just her like kind of like moving in slow motion. And then I don't even remember what she actually does, but she just leans over, and she like, it's like a profile view of her making this weird, it's her arm starts moving without her is what happens. And then it like, she like pulls her body over and like, and then just goes back to sleep. So that type of shit, it's like if I'm like scrolling through videos and I see like one that's, like there's like, creepy like TikToks that are made to just be like unnerving, like just that sort of shit. I was like, I don't like this. And so it made my skin crawl. And it felt like nostalgic in a way. But yeah, I mean, I completely understand, just like what you said, this movie is very much not for everybody. I am really curious because as we're recording this, literally today or maybe last night, Jane Schoenbrun's but her next film, their next film with A24 just debuted. I saw the TV's Glow or whatever the name is, to like rave reviews. And I know it's supposed to be a film about trans identity, but I've a number of reviewers that I've seen saying it's going to be one of the best of the year. So really excited to see. Like, I think that I think that the things that they're able to storytell are really important, and I think that they're like on the right track to like making great films, and that this one may not hit for everybody, but I think it's a great like showing of, look at this new voice in the genre that obviously has wonderful artistic views, even if the landing of the film isn't exactly what you thought or exactly what works for you.
Yeah, that's 100% fair. I guess maybe that's why I was as frustrated as I was, because it felt like a movie that had really great setup. Like, I did care about the character. It did set up all of these important themes that, both things that I've dealt with myself, things that friends have dealt with, things that you can clearly see like the younger generations today dealing with, and just so many important things. But I just felt like it was all set up, and I didn't get anything from it. And it just didn't meet like my sensibilities. But I want to stress that I didn't leave that experience going, oh, this, because they wrote and directed it, right? It was I left it going, this person is clearly very talented. But I don't know if it was a budgeting thing or just different taste in what they were going for. But I just felt like it set up this wonderful stage and then didn't do anything with it for me. I cared about the character. I cared about the themes, but I just didn't, that creepy moment wasn't enough for me.
100%. And I definitely do think that like the ending, like the last act, didn't really like land great. I don't think they wrapped it up in a great way. But yeah, well, I get it. And that's like the reviews on Letterboxd are pretty like they lean like the average is higher, probably in the 3s, but they definitely, it's not like a consensus 5-star movie. So I get that.
And also really quick, just a kind of off subject, but on you paralleled it with Skinamarink. And I want to say again, that's totally one where it is not for everybody. I think for me, for like my childhood experience, like just the abstract creepiness that can happen just by being a kid awake in a house alone at night, just really hit me in a lot of ways. And yeah, so I think that's actually, I'm really glad you made that comparison, because I think that it's like they're similar in this weird way, but they're two different, like, I wonder how
to filmmaking.
I wonder if we did like I would be curious to see, like, if we had a bunch of people watch both of those movies, if we would see like any pattern in people getting one and not getting the other.
Yeah, I'm curious. I would feel like people that like one would like the other, but for me, it's not. It's not the same. Obviously, for you, it's not the same.
I would just be curious to see like that circle chart and how much of a percentage is in the middle and stuff like that. All right, but yeah, so there's that. If you guys you guys have to pick who's your favorite. Do you like Skinamarink more, or we're all going to the World's Fair more? Do you like Steve or do you like me?
That's hard to say fast.
Skinamarink.
That's hard to say really fast. World's Fair.
The other thing that I just want to say before we fully jump into Rex is I binged season 1 of True Detective, and I have now seen season 1 of True Detective.
Sean.
Yeah,
damn, we gotta talk about that.
Yeah,
season and so
maybe good. I was about to say, I don't know if we should probably set aside for another time to really dive into it, but I want to say, holy shit, very good. I'm excited to jump into season 2.
Yeah,
I know
you're gonna be further ahead than I am for True Detective, because I've only seen season 1.
You've only seen one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I also want to say, before you move on to something else, you didn't like We're All Going to the World's Fair. You gave it half a star. Here's the movies that I've given half a star or a star on Letterboxd. Half a star is Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving 3. And then a film that I watched that I believe it was video on demand or maybe a Lifetime original. I think it's an adaptation of a Stephen King novel, but it's called A Good Marriage, and it was a bad movie. 1 stars that I've given: The Exorcist, Believer, Diary of the Dead. Shout out to George A. Romero. The movie Old, The Beach That Makes You Old. The movie Stuber, Piranha 3D, and The First Purge. So just for some context, those are the films that you're lumping this in with. And I know it's different because those are my reviews, not your reviews, but I just wanted to give that for some because that's when I think of half a star, I'm like, shit, that's a bad movie.
Yeah, well, it's funny. That is so fair, because it's not that everything about this movie was bad. Trying to fit things into a rating system is so hard for me. And it's really easy to overthink.
Yeah.
And someone could totally look at that and be like, oh, there's nothing good about this movie. And that's not even what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just that as a whole,
for you,
I left it I left it thinking to myself, that was just a waste of time because I didn't get anything from it. Yeah. So in a way, I can leave a worse review for a movie if they did a bunch of stuff right and then really dropped like a super important ball to me, because at that point I'm more frustrated. It's almost like I would have rather you just fucked everything up than get my hopes up.
That's fair. I'm trying to think of if I have like First Reformed on here or something, because that's another good example of that, or even The Last Exorcism. Yeah, like First Reformed, I gave a 2. It's another movie where it's like, God, I really loved that movie, and then it just dropped the ball. The Last Exorcism, I gave it 3. I'd probably give that a higher rating if it didn't, drop the ball at the end. But all right, what's your rec this week?
Okay, so my rec this week is I watched. Dude, have you seen Birth Rebirth?
No, I've heard it's great though. I know we've talked about it.
Holy shit! I was so pleasant. All right, I'm even gonna say for this one, all right. So my rec for this week is Birth Rebirth, and I was pleasantly surprised because I think I have been a little bit frustrated with at least a lot of the indie horror flicks that I've seen recently, just in the sense that everything is kind of going for a more subtle, eerie,
slow burn,
like slow burn, art housey factor where there's only like, and I love that, but it just felt like that's all I was getting. So looking at this, I don't know, just the little bit I had seen from like a teaser and even just images and like an article that I read. I was just under the impression that this movie was just going to kind of be stuff I've seen a bunch of times over. It is not. It is those things, but it does it so well. Like you can just tell, I don't know, there was so much thought and heart put into it, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm really trying to keep my review limited, but I will tell you that this movie fucks and it's so twisted and it's a good time, and Carla delivers, and it's just really good, man. Yeah,
right.
so we'll do a deeper dive of it a little more in the future. But I was thinking about one thing. Did you, when we were talking about the Frankenstein movies that had come out, did you mention this as one of them?
Yes.
Okay, so this brings up probably another conversation that we'll have to deeper dive later.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I was thinking a lot about what is Frankenstein exactly, because it's this felt more like a Lazarus kind of movie to me than Frankenstein.
Okay.
And they got me thinking, like, what is Frankenstein? I remembered being a little kid and being kind of confused that Dr. Frankenstein used the term he had created life, because I was like, well, he didn't really create life. When I thought of creating life, I thought
Jesus
of
created
Zeus.
Life.
Well, no, but so, like, all right, when I thought of creating life, I thought of Zeus in the animated Hercules making Pegasus out of like Nimbus clouds. And in Frankenstein, I was like, no, he's bringing someone back from the dead. And to me, those were two different things. And I was like, but in Frankenstein, it is a little bit different, because he doesn't just take a dead body and reanimate it. He takes different parts of a ton of people. But ultimately, I was like, the brain is the person he's bringing back. He just put them in a new body. So with that, I guess I didn't super associate this movie with, I don't want to spoil shit, but this movie is not rebuilding a person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, even the angry black girl and her monster is not pieces of a person back together, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, not fully. I will say, so yeah, I think when people talk about like a Frankenstein movie, it's basically like any sort of rebirth movie. You know, the subline, or the subtitle of Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus, I think. And Prometheus is the man who stole the fire from gods and gave it to humans. And so that's the, you know, there's the aspect of the Frankenstein rebirth part, but there's also the aspect of like taking this power that we shouldn't have and using it to bring someone back to life, right? So I think that's where, you know, like Poor Things is a film where it's not like I don't want to spoil really anything for Poor Things, but it's a rebirth movie. It's someone that was dead brought back to life, and them experiencing the world. And so I think that's where it's like, you know, there may not be movies there are movies like The Wife of Frankenstein, just like a very literal, but The Bride of Frankenstein, very literal adaptation of it, probably, or like it's literally saying Frankenstein in it. Or there's these other films that are like references of it or homages to it. And yeah, I mean, is Frankenstein just a Lazarus? Like, is that just like referencing the Lazarus, tale? Probably, even though it's literally referencing Prometheus in Greek mythology as opposed to Judeo-Christian mythology. But same sort of thing. I get where you're coming from. Like,
Absolutely.
It may not be a one-to-one, but and I haven't seen Birth Rebirth, obviously, so.
Sure. Yeah, it just got me thinking a lot about where Frankenstein lies in that journey. And I was like, is the heart of Frankenstein stealing the power from God? Like, is it about becoming God and creating life, or is it about cheating God and cheating death? And that's where, and I was like, it is the Lazarus Effect, that movie that came out in like 2016
with Olivia Wilde.
Is that a Frankenstein movie? Yeah, I was like, is that a Frankenstein movie? Either way, it just got me thinking a lot about Frankenstein. I also forgot that I wanted to mention a thing that I was worried about was I really am, and maybe this is part of my World's Fair thing, but I am just, you really got to do something different than just a person being weird, like a person that was normal, like being possessed by something. And I was worried that, all that I was going to get from Birth Rebirth was like, small spoiler, but like they bring a kid back and the kid is mean now. And like, that just wasn't going to, this movie is so much more than that. And that's where I'll leave it. But
all right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think
my brain's all over. You should definitely watch it.
Yeah. And that's something where it's like, at the heart of it, it's like there's the doctor part where it's like the doctor has to deal with the repercussions of bringing the person back.
Yeah.
And there's the Frankenstein's monster part, which is like the monster dealing with life again. But yeah, what were you gonna say? You're very excited.
I forgot. So I was looking through Shudder because I left my Letterboxd review of Birth Rebirth, and then I also was looking at Shudder and I wanted to do the rating system there.
Yeah.
Most of the ratings on Shudder for Birth Rebirth are 4 to 5 stars.
Yeah.
And I saw one, or not stars, skulls. I saw one skull review, and it was because it was too real and too fucked up. That's a win in my book.
That's funny.
So
yeah,
that's as good as a 5-star.
I think it's funny. The reviews on Shudder are funny to me because they're normally like really high or really low. Like there's nothing in between. It's like this movie is horror, and you're like, all right, great.
The community is passionate.
The community is very passionate. So speaking of
what
Shudder,
about you? What do you got?
That actually leads me into my rec. So I was trying to find a movie to watch the other day, and I went onto Shudder actually to watch Poison for the Fairies, which you recommended. And I didn't watch it.
All right.
I went on Shudder to watch it because I knew it was there. But I ended up finding something else. And I need to say, and I haven't necessarily been living a lie, but we've talked a lot about a movie, or other people have talked a lot about a movie for a long time on the show since we started the show. And I've had a blind spot in the horror genre for a long time. And I've never said anything about it. People would talk about how great this movie is. I would just nod and smile. But I'd never seen The Thing. I don't know if we've talked about that at all. I don't think we've ever talked about that. It's a big blind spot in class. There's a lot of, I haven't seen a lot of classics probably, but this is a big one.
Yeah.
And so I watched The Thing for the first time. Not The Thing from Outer Space, not the OG based on the novel, or the first adaptation of the novel, but specifically John Carpenter's 1982 The Thing. And it's a great film. It is.
Yeah, dude.
It is. I don't know. I think I get it why people love it so much. I was really trying to to put myself in the shoes and think about it for when it came out. I did do a lot of deep diving for because I knew the critical reception right after it came out wasn't great, and that's a really interesting story by itself.
Which we've talked about a couple times, loosely. But
but as a whole, the cast is so good. I'm probably the millionth person to say this, or the 8 billionth person to say this, but the practical effects in this are just insane.
What?
It's the goopiest, one of the goopiest 1980s movies I've ever seen. But even just the design of the things is so interesting. And the thing that I think is really cool is that not only is the practical effects so great in this movie, but the production design, the room that they're in at the end where they're trying to flip the switches and turn the power back on and all that sort of shit. Just that room, the way it's lit and the way it looks. And I was just the vibes are so fucking cool here. Dude. And Kurt Russell is such a badass. My guy's wearing a 10-gallon hat and it's negative 40 degrees outside. It's just, it's really, really good. I didn't realize that Keith David is in this movie, and he's amazing. His voice is so good. I actually literally reached out to try to see if we could get Keith David on the show because he's an icon. But yeah, I loved it. I will watch the 2011 prequel sometime soon because I would like to check both of those off of my list. But yeah, great film, and I still want to watch Poison for the Fairies because the way that you explained it made me really interested. But I also realized that the noise that happens when you log on to Shudder is just the opening score of The Thing. It's one of the first couple notes of one of the openings music in The Thing. I didn't explain that well.
So I'd be curious to see if it's exactly the same. I know that, so even on Shudder, there is an option to watch any other movie. You can basically just play the full Shudder theme, and it was made by John Carpenter. I think it's just that he used like it's just super similar, but it does sound almost identical, if not identical.
So fun thing that I found out about The Thing is that John Carpenter did not do the music for this.
Really,
he did not do the score for this film, which is because it's different than a John. It's different than a John Carpenter score. The composer of this film is Ennio Morricone or Morricone. He did a ton of stuff. Hateful Eight, The Untouchables. He's a really well-known guy. But it was interesting because I was like, this doesn't really sound like a Carpenter score, and it wasn't a Carpenter score. So I thought that was interesting. But dude, it was really funny because there's like the spaceship at the beginning and then the title.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's first going up to their like encampment or whatever you want to call it.
Dun, dun.
Yes.
Dun, dun.
And I was like, that is the beginning of that's what happens when you open Shudder. So little fun
then
thing.
that just means John ripped off homie. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. You just said his
Ennio,
name. Yeah,
whatever.
But yeah, you can next time you go on Shudder, look for the full Shudder theme. It'll be right there. It's just something you can. It's like 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Interesting.
Something.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So real quick, first off, I forgive you for not watching Poison for the Fairies because you watched The Thing, and that's totally fine. I'm so glad that you did it. Were you spooked? You sat there and talked all this talking shop talk, bro. Were you spooked?
No.
How did you watch it in the dark at night?
Yeah, I watched it. I watched it at night. I don't think it was that scary. Make
you uncomfy? Did it gross out your tummy?
I thought it was cool. I thought there was like some stuff where I was like, ugh.
Yeah,
but
that movie's unsettling.
Yeah, no, there was some stuff I was like, I don't know, I didn't think you could show that. Yeah, the dog inside of that human looks like a vagina. Yeah, there's just a lot of weird stuff. But yeah, I also liked it as a mystery, as a who's the bat,
sure.
And even the final shot, I know it's a thing. Like, is it spoiler for The Thing that I wouldn't have wanted to hear this a couple days ago, but is it McCreary or is it Childs? Like, or is it both of them? Like, that's the whole thing.
I saw a very good theory that and I think it makes so much sense. So, all right. People have asked John Carpenter throughout the years, like, who do you know? Is there an answer? Is basically like, they're like, we understand that you're probably not going to tell us, but is there an answer? And he said, yes, there is an answer on which one of them is The Thing. And he's never, at least that I could find, he has never talked about it. I saw a theory a couple weeks ago that makes so much sense. So at the end, so I have to remember their character's name. So Childs looks at McCready. Yeah, McCready. And he comes and sits down. He joins McCready, and they're both like, they're kind of doing their standoff. Like, I guess we're just going to wait and see what happens, whatever. But McCready offers Childs a cigarette. And he did this to know if Childs was Childs or if Childs was The Thing, because they had talked before about keeping bodily fluids away from each other, not getting too close of contact. If Childs was actually Childs and was using any brain cell, he would not have taken McCready's cigarette. They didn't share it. McCready smoked this cigarette and then gave it to Childs, like, with his spit on it, and Childs took it, which would hint that either Childs is fucking dumb or he's The Thing and was fucking dumb and wasn't realizing that he was being tested. And that makes sense to me. That checks out for me. Now, why McCready didn't just like gas him on the spot, I don't know. Yeah. But
I also think
the cigarette exchange does
that,
lean in a direction.
McCready, we're with McCready for the end, like we're with him while he's like,
there's like a scene or two where you miss, where you're not like, where he could have gotten it,
I guess.
No,
but like, no, I mean, he's basically in the basement area, and then he blows all the shit up. The whole thing blows up, and then he's outside, and which maybe he died in the explosion. Maybe they're both, and then and then you see Childs. You haven't seen Childs in forever. The last time you saw Childs, you were like, hey, watch this shit, don't leave, and then he goes running off to chase down the doctor or whatever. But that was, I loved that it was this, an hour 45 mystery sci-fi body horror movie. Like it's you know, obviously a classic for a reason and informs a lot of stuff. So yeah, really enjoyed it.
The prequel is good too. A lot of people don't like it because it's CGI focused instead of practical. It's still really good, and there's a lot of scary shit in it. So
is it the Norwegian people?
When you watch that.
Is it like the people that they find? Is it their story?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that's the way it's set up. It's a prequel. It's the idea is that it's them. You know, the people that you see at the beginning of the thing is the people,
the ones trying to kill the dog.
Yeah, I guess I need to go back and rewatch it, but there's a specific, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but there's a specific thing that makes me 98% confident that that is the Norwegian team from before.
All right.
So
interesting. Yep. Yeah, I want to watch it soon because definitely I'm trying to make my way through these ones that are big blind spots, but that was probably one of the biggest blind spots that I had in the genre. So
yeah. Look at you.
On that note, berate me for not seeing The Thing until being almost 30 years old. Send me an email, mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com. You can give us hate mail at mostlyhorrorpod on Instagram or Twitter and TikTok at mostlyhorror. Yeah, Sean?
I was just going to say, and we want email us on the Skinamarink World's Fair.
Yeah, which one do you like more? The two movies are exactly the same. Tell us which one you like more.
Not true.
You can find me everywhere at Steven is Average. Sean is on all the socials at Hypocrite Inc. or Hypocrite.inc. And that is all we got for you. We will catch you next time.
Goodbye.